Not every ending is loud. Some endings arrive so quietly that no one notices until everything has already changed. Most people believe an empath reaches their breaking point through anger, shouting, or emotional outbursts. That is what many expect after years of patience, sacrifice, and understanding. But the truth is far more unsettling. The final stage of an empath's patience rarely looks dramatic. It doesn't come with revenge. It doesn't come with long speeches. It doesn't come with endless arguments or emotional pleas. Instead, it arrives with silence. A silence that feels peaceful on the outside but marks one of the biggest emotional shifts a person can experience. This is the stage almost nobody talks about, because by the time it appears, the empath has already made a decision deep inside their heart. That decision isn't made in a single day. It is built through countless moments of disappointment, broken trust, ignored feelings, and promises that were never kept. Every time they chose understanding instead of confrontation, every time they forgave what should never have become a habit, every time they convinced themselves that tomorrow would be different, another small piece of their patience quietly disappeared. The surprising part is that most people never notice this process while it is happening. They continue believing the empath will always be there, always listening, always giving, always fixing every problem, and always making room for everyone else's emotions. Then one day, everything changes. The empath stops explaining. They stop chasing conversations that lead nowhere. They stop trying to convince people to care. They stop asking for the bare minimum. They stop fighting for relationships that only survive because of their effort. From the outside, it may look like they suddenly became cold, distant, or uncaring. In reality, the opposite is true. They simply reached the point where their heart could no longer survive on empty promises. What looks like emotional distance is often emotional survival. What appears to be giving up is often the beginning of choosing themselves for the very first time. This quiet transformation confuses many people because there is no warning that feels obvious. There is no dramatic goodbye. There is no final argument that everyone remembers forever. The biggest warning is often the absence of the effort that once seemed endless. The messages become shorter. The explanations disappear. The need to prove their love slowly fades away. The person who once carried everyone else's emotional weight finally decides to put that burden down. That moment surprises people because they spent so long believing the empath would never leave. But patience has limits, even when it belongs to someone with the kindest heart in the room. One of the least understood truths about empathy is that being deeply compassionate does not mean having endless emotional energy. Empaths often absorb stress, sadness, conflict, and pain from the people around them. They naturally notice emotions that others ignore. They care deeply, sometimes so deeply that they forget to care for themselves. For a while, this seems like a strength. They become the dependable friend, the supportive partner, the trusted listener, and the person everyone turns to during difficult times. Yet very few people stop to ask, who carries the empath when they become emotionally exhausted? Very few notice how much energy disappears every single day, while the empath quietly keeps everyone else together. Over time, this hidden emotional weight grows heavier, and if nothing changes, even the strongest heart begins protecting itself. That protection doesn't always look like building walls. Sometimes it looks like walking away from endless disappointment without saying another word. Sometimes it looks like accepting that not everyone values kindness in the same way. Sometimes it looks like finally believing actions instead of promises. This is the final stage that so many people misunderstand. It is not about becoming heartless. It is not about losing compassion. It is not about deciding that nobody deserves love. It is about recognizing that love cannot survive where respect is missing, where effort flows only in one direction, and where patience becomes an excuse for accepting emotional pain. Throughout this video, you will discover why an empath's patience lasts much longer than most people expect, what silently happens inside them long before anyone notices a change, why their final stage is almost always mistaken for indifference, and why the people around them usually realize what they lost only after the empath has already emotionally moved on. You will also learn the psychological reasons behind this transformation, the hidden emotional patterns that slowly lead to it, and why protecting your own peace is not a sign of weakness, but one of the healthiest decisions a person can make. Some of these insights challenge popular beliefs about empathy. while others reveal emotional truths that are rarely discussed openly. By the end of this video, the silence of an empath will no longer seem confusing. It will make perfect sense. It may even change the way you look at your own relationships, your own boundaries, and the quiet moments that often speak louder than any argument ever could. So stay with us until the very end, because the final lesson is the one that explains why an empath's greatest act of self-love is often mistaken for emotional distance. And once you understand it, you may never see patience the same way again. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy thoughtful conversations about empathy, psychology, relationships, emotional growth, and the hidden patterns that shape our lives, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos. Now, let's uncover the final stage of an empath's patience that almost nobody talks about. One of the biggest misunderstandings about empaths is the belief that they suddenly stop caring. The truth is almost the complete opposite. An empath rarely reaches the point of emotional distance overnight because their natural instinct is to hold on longer than most people would. They do not give up after the first mistake or the second disappointment. Instead, they look for reasons to stay. They search for explanations that make another person's behavior easier to forgive. When someone forgets an important promise, the empath tells themselves that everyone gets busy sometimes. When someone speaks harshly during an argument, they assume stress is responsible instead of a lack of respect. When someone repeatedly fails to show up emotionally, they convince themselves that healing takes time and people deserve another chance. This way of thinking comes from a place of compassion, not weakness. Empaths naturally try to understand what is happening beneath another person's actions. They often ask themselves what pain someone might be carrying instead of immediately judging what they see. This ability allows them to build deep and meaningful relationships, but it can also become the reason they stay in situations long after those situations stop being healthy. They focus on the person's potential instead of the reality standing in front of them. They remember the kind moments instead of giving equal attention to the painful ones. They continue believing that tomorrow could finally become the day everything changes. Hope becomes stronger than evidence, and because of that hope, they keep investing more time, more energy, and more love into relationships that may no longer deserve it. This emotional investment grows slowly over weeks, months, and sometimes even years. Every shared memory makes it harder to leave. Every difficult conversation, survived together, feels like proof that the relationship is worth saving. Every apology sounds like another opportunity to rebuild trust. The empath begins measuring people not only by what they are doing today, but by who they believe those people could become in the future. They see kindness hidden beneath anger. They see fear hiding behind emotional distance. They see wounded hearts where others only notice harmful behavior. This perspective is beautiful because it reflects genuine compassion, yet it also creates a dangerous blind spot. While others judge actions, the empath often judges intentions. While others walk away after repeated disrespect, the empath searches for deeper reasons behind it. They tell themselves that nobody is perfect. They remind themselves that healing is a process. They believe love can inspire growth if they remain patient just a little longer. The problem is that not every person wants to grow, and not every relationship becomes healthier simply because one person refuses to stop believing in it. Another reason empaths struggle to let go is the fear of giving up too soon. Deep inside, many worry that leaving might mean abandoning someone who still has the ability to change. They question themselves constantly. They wonder whether they could have explained their feelings better. They ask if one more conversation might finally make everything clear. They think about whether walking away would make them selfish instead of compassionate. These questions keep them emotionally connected, even when their heart has already been carrying far more than it should. They replay conversations in their mind, searching for better words they could have used. They replay memories, hoping to understand exactly where things began falling apart. Instead of protecting themselves immediately, they continue trying to protect the relationship. Instead of asking whether someone deserves another chance, they ask whether they have done enough. This constant self-reflection makes them incredibly understanding people, but it also delays decisions that would protect their own emotional well-being. They become so focused on saving the connection that they slowly forget they also deserve peace. The difficult truth is that patience always leaves fingerprints on the heart. Every time an empath forgives repeated disrespect, they carry a little more emotional weight. Every time they ignore their own pain to comfort someone else, another piece of their energy quietly disappears. Every time they stay silent to avoid conflict, they teach themselves that their feelings can wait. These moments rarely seem important on their own. They appear small, almost forgettable. Yet when hundreds of these moments collect over time, they create emotional exhaustion that cannot be ignored forever. It is never just one broken promise. It is every broken promise added together. It is never just one disappointing conversation. It is every conversation that ended without real change. It is never just one lonely evening. It is every evening spent wondering why love feels so one-sided. Little by little, the emotional balance begins shifting, even if nobody else notices it happening. Inside the empath, another process has already begun. Their heart continues giving, but it no longer feels as light as it once did. What used to feel joyful now feels draining. What once came naturally now requires effort. They still answer late-night phone calls. They still listen without judging. They still offer encouragement when everyone else has given up. But every act of kindness now costs more emotional energy than before. The weight they carry becomes heavier because they are not only managing their own emotions anymore. They are carrying disappointment, guilt, worry, sadness, and fear that belong to other people as well. They absorb tension from every difficult conversation. They notice silent pain that others pretend does not exist. They often sense emotional shifts before anyone speaks a single word. While this sensitivity allows them to comfort others deeply, it also means they rarely get a break from emotional responsibility. Even during moments of silence, their mind continues processing feelings, solving problems, and searching for ways to help everyone around them. Over time, this constant emotional responsibility creates a quiet form of exhaustion that many people fail to recognize. Physical tiredness usually disappears after a good night's sleep, but emotional exhaustion follows a person into every part of life. Simple conversations begin feeling overwhelming. Small disappointments hurt more than they used to. The empath starts feeling emotionally full, as though there is no space left to carry one more burden. Yet they continue pushing forward because caring for others has become part of their identity. They believe slowing down means letting people down. They believe saying no makes them less loving. They believe resting, while someone else is hurting, would somehow make them selfish. This way of thinking slowly empties their emotional reserves until even the strongest heart begins struggling to recover. Compassion fatigue quietly enters during this stage. It is not a lack of kindness. It is not the loss of empathy. It is the natural result of giving emotional support for so long without receiving enough in return. The empath still wants people to be happy. They still wish the best for everyone they love. The difference is that their own emotional system has become overloaded. Every new problem feels heavier than the last because there has been no time to heal from previous ones. They begin waking up already feeling emotionally tired. Conversations that once energized them now leave them feeling empty. They smile on the outside while silently wishing for just one day where nobody needs anything from them. This feeling often brings guilt because empaths believe they should always be available. They question themselves instead of recognizing that exhaustion is a normal response to carrying too much for too long. What makes this process especially painful is that there is rarely one dramatic event responsible for it. People often search for the final argument, the major betrayal, or the unforgettable mistake that ended everything. In reality, the relationship was usually changing long before anyone noticed. It was the hundreds of tiny disappointments that slowly reshaped the empath's heart. The forgotten birthdays, the unanswered messages, the repeated excuses, the promises that sounded sincere but never became actions. The moments when they listened for hours, but nobody asked how they were feeling. The times they sacrificed their own needs because someone else's problems always seemed more urgent. Each moment looked insignificant by itself. Together, they became impossible to ignore. Then something remarkable begins happening deep inside. The empath slowly stops expecting people to become who they always hoped they would be. This change is quiet. There is no dramatic announcement. There is no emotional explosion. Instead, acceptance quietly replaces expectation. The heart becomes calmer, not because everything has improved, but because it has finally stopped fighting reality. They realize they cannot force honesty. They cannot force appreciation. They cannot force effort. They cannot love another person into becoming emotionally available. That realization changes everything. This is the final stage that almost nobody recognizes while it is happening. People assume anger is the final chapter because anger is loud and impossible to ignore. Yet many empaths move beyond anger completely. They reach emotional acceptance. They stop arguing because they no longer believe another argument will change anything. They stop explaining because they have already explained the same feelings countless times. They stop asking for effort because genuine effort should not require endless reminders. They stop expecting change because repeated actions have already provided the answer they were refusing to see. Suddenly they become calm in situations that once deeply upset them. Their silence surprises everyone because it replaces years of emotional investment. They no longer chase conversations that only leave them hurt. They no longer chase affection that should be freely given. They no longer chase people who repeatedly choose distance over connection. Many misunderstand this calmness. They believe everything has finally been forgiven. They think the empath has become more patient than ever. Some even believe the relationship has become healthier because conflict has disappeared. They fail to realize that the absence of conflict sometimes means the absence of emotional attachment. The empath has not stopped caring about people as human beings. They have simply stopped believing it is their responsibility to save relationships alone. Their emotional energy quietly begins moving away from constant repair and towards self-protection. Only then do other people begin noticing what has changed. Messages become less frequent. Conversations become shorter. The endless emotional support that once seemed guaranteed slowly fades away. The empath no longer rushes to rescue every crisis. They no longer sacrifice their own peace to solve problems that others refuse to solve themselves. The person who once remembered every important date, checked in after every difficult day, and carried every emotional burden finally begins putting some of that weight down. Those around them suddenly feel the absence of what they had taken for granted. They ask why the empath seems different. They wonder why the warmth feels quieter. They search for one single reason, never realizing the answer was built from hundreds of moments spread across months or even years. The empath has not become cold. They have become emotionally protective, and that difference changes everything. As we reach the end of this journey, one truth stands out above everything else. The final stage of an empath's patience is not hatred. It is not revenge. It is not becoming cold or heartless. It is the quiet moment when they finally understand that protecting their own peace is just as important as protecting everyone else's feelings. After giving countless chances, carrying endless emotional weight, and hoping that love alone could fix what was broken, they come to a life-changing realization. Self-respect is not selfish. Healthy boundaries are not cruelty. Walking away from constant emotional pain is not giving up. It is choosing to survive. An empath never truly loses the ability to love. Their compassion does not disappear. Their kindness does not fade away. What changes is where that kindness begins. Instead of pouring every ounce of energy into people who refuse to value it, they start investing in their own healing, their own peace, and their own future. They stop chasing people who continually walk away. They stop proving their worth to those who never appreciated it. They stop carrying burdens that were never theirs to carry. That is not weakness. It is wisdom earned through experience. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this. The loudest heartbreaks often end in complete silence. By the time an empath stops explaining, stops arguing, and stops asking for change, their heart has already accepted a truth their mind struggled to believe for a very long time. The quietest goodbye is often the one that follows the loudest years of silent sacrifice. And when an empath finally stops carrying everyone else, they make room to carry themselves. That is where true healing begins. That is where real freedom begins. And that is where a stronger, wiser version of them is finally born. If this message resonated with you, or if you recognized yourself or someone you love in today's discussion, let us know in the comments below. Your story may help someone else who is quietly going through the same journey. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear these words today, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful videos about empathy, psychology, relationships, and personal growth. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thank you for watching. Take care of your heart. Protect your peace, and we'll see you in the next video.